Am I the only one that dances to that music? I hope everybody else does too. All right, let's see. We'll get 7 people. All right, so I'm going to, this is kind of a rehash of the presentation I gave to my members the other day. Geez, I suppose I should. Oh, yeah, here we go. Hey, don't forget to get my book, How to Own 1,000 Apartments in 5 Years, on Amazon. It's a lot of fun. I got a little ribbing today from my crew in the Philippines because I mentioned them in my book, and I was just testing if they could read. I'm kidding. All right. So while we're letting this build up with the peeps, let me read to you some interesting stuff that I came across today. Ships carrying manure had to store the manure in the hold up high to avoid contamination with the water, and thereby creating an explosive mixture. Hence, store high in transit. Identified manure with SHIT, and the name stuck. Yeah, it's really true. I read it on the internet. Here's another one. Early airplane throttles had a ball on the end of it. In order to go full throttle, the pilot had to push the throttle all the way to the wall of the instrument panel. Hence, balls to the wall. Yeah? What do you think of that one? It's true. It's on the internet. Here's another one. This one's kind of cool. I'm gonna save these for the rest of these for my members because I got a bunch of them. They're all really good. During World War II, U.S. airplanes were armed with belts of bullets, which they would shoot during dogfights and on strafing runs. These belts were folded into the wing compartments that fed their machine guns. These belts measured 27 feet and contained hundreds of rounds of bullets. Oftentimes, the pilots would return from their missions having expended all of their bullets on various targets, and they would say, I gave them the whole 9 yards, meaning they used up all their ammunition. Huh? Pretty good. I thought that was kind of cool. All right. One final one, and then we're going to get into our lesson today. My teaching. This one. Oh no, I'm going to give you 2 more. I'm going to give you 2 more because they're really good. They're really good. Did you know the saying, God willing and the creek don't rise, was in reference to the Creek Indians and not a body of water? It was written by Benjamin Hawkins in the late 18th century. He was a politician and Indian diplomat. While in the South, Hawkins was requested by the president to return to Washington. In his response, he wrote, God willing and the creek don't rise. Because he capitalized the word creek, he was referring to the Creek Indian tribe and not a body of water. Okay, last one, and this one's cool too. Here we go. In George Washington's days, there were no cameras, obviously. One's image was either sculpted or painted. Some paintings of George Washington showed him standing behind a desk with one arm behind his back, while others showed both legs and both arms. Prices charged by artists were not based on how many people were painted, but by how many limbs were to be painted. Arms and legs are limbs, obviously. Therefore, painting them would cost the buyer more. Hence the expression, okay, but it will cost you an arm and a leg. Isn't that wild? I love those. That's so cool. All right, let's get into the lesson of the day. All right, so how am I going to do this? I jumped myself. Oh, I do it this way? No. Well, maybe I could do it that way. Yeah, let's do it this way. All right, so let's talk about, I got this topic, how much cash do you need to get started making offers? I got this topic, and the point I'm trying to make here is not how much does it cost to buy a property, meaning like all the down payment and the equity, all that. No. What people always ask me is how much powder do I need to have in my bank account in order for me to start getting into real estate, start doing the transactions. And so I really broke it down to give them an example of how actually it works. So oh wait, this is I jumped. Oh, here we go. No, I'm not going to do that one. Hold on, Jeekers. Where is it? Molly. I'm not yelling at Molly. I'm just asking for her help. Okay, so there's the Milken Institute. We're not talking about that. We're going to skip this one. Molly, why is it not happening? Hold on. Let me just check to make sure they grab the right one. Yep. And I need to get to... Yeah, I need to get to the next slide from the Milken Institute. Do I need to upload it again? Let me see. Oh, hold on. Molly's sending me a Voxer. Okay. Oh, 5 through 8. All right, let's see what she's saying. You can get maybe 9. Okay. Let's see if we can get to 9. Sorry about this, folks. This is what happens with live television. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's too bad. That's weird. Very strange. All right, so let me tell you what we're talking about. We're talking about money. And, you will always need money to buy property, but it doesn't always have to be your money. Just keep that in mind. All businesses require money to run. Once you run out of money, you're out of business. So you always want to make sure you have enough capital, cash on hand to get through to the next transaction. Now, I purchased all of my properties with no money down, but I always showed up to the closing table with cash to close the deal. It just wasn't always my money. Okay, so I want you to always think about that. Keep that in mind, that you don't have to have oodles and oodles of cash in order to get the deal done. You can come to the table just enough to get by. You can borrow money to do it. You can borrow, get a line of credit to get you over the hump. I'm not talking about the debt and the equity. That's a totally different conversation. I'm just talking about what it's going to take you to get to the closing table. Because remember, we set these syndication deals up. We set up some of these deals where we get paid at the closing table. But if we can't make it to the closing table, we're out of business. All cash requires a business. Once a business is out of cash, it's out of business. If you don't have enough cash to get to the closing table, that's what I'm talking about. And so that's what this conversation is about. How much money does it take to get to the closing table? Where are you going to get asked to write checks throughout the course of this transaction? All right. Now, first check you're going to have to write is the earnest money deposit. Oh, you know what's happening here? Oh, son of a gun. You can barely see. Oh, I see what happened. You see, you can't see. This says earnest money deposit. All right. So, Molly, if that seems to be what the issue is that it's this particular slide montage that I used to make these slides is not showing up on StreamYard. Bummer. Okay, that's okay. So let's talk just us here. Earnest money deposit. First check you're going to write, typically about 1% of the purchase price. Sometimes you can write it as 2% and have it be received by the escrow agent as 2 tranches. Fancy term, but that's what we call 2 times that you're going to write the check for the earnest money deposit. The reason why you do that is because, remember, you're in a sales and marketing business, and the first sale is to the owner. And so therefore you have to write your offer in such a way that your offer is better than all the other offers out there. and you're going to make sure that your offer rises to the top of the pile. And one way to do this is by putting more money where your mouth is and by giving 2 tranches of the earnest money deposit. So that is what we sometimes do to make our offers look better. But this is going to be the first check you write. Okay. Now, the first check you write, it's going to go to the escrow agent. So this thing had better clear the account because they're going to cash it. It's not what we call in the legal profession descrow. It is truly escrow. Descrow meaning, just let me hold the check and I'll throw it in the desk drawer. The realtor never cashes it. No, these guys are going to cash the check. You're playing with the big boys. So all of this money that you're putting up for the earnest money deposit, when you structure the deal correctly, like in a syndication, you're going to get this money back. You're going to set it so your investors cover that check. And at the closing table, you get the funds back. If you don't make it to the closing table, you're not going to get the money back. All right. But that's why I always teach my members, when you get to the point in the transaction where that earnest money goes hard, you better know you're going to close this deal. Okay. So that's how you need to structure the earnest money. That's the first check you write. Have it ready to go. Borrow it, put it on credit cards, at cash advances, personal loans, your bank account, your 401k, all these different sources to get into this business, get that money so that it happens for you. In my program, my members have access up to $50,000 for their earnest money deposit. All right. It's strings attached. It's like a hard money loan for multifamily. And it's not based upon, like hard money loans are based upon a hard asset, collateral being the house. In our particular case, it's all contract controlled. So that money never goes hard. You have to replace it with your own money or someone else's money, or you're quitting the deal. So that's how the earnest money, that's the first check you're going to write. So, if you don't want any friends or family or partners involved, go back and figure out how much money you can write a check for. And that's going to represent 1% of the value of the property that you should be looking for. Okay. Next slide. Let's see how this one looks any better. Oh, it looks beautiful. Beautiful. It's supposed to say second check right there. And I can tell you it does. You just can't see it. My bad. Here we go. Next, second check. Okay. Now, this is for what we call third parties. Third party reports. How much do you have to spend for the third parties? Hey, what third parties is a bank asking for? So these are the types of things that you have to really write a check for. Now, folks, if you don't close, this money's gone. Even if you get your money back because the financing contingency kicked in, this money's gone. You can structure it so that at the closing table, your investors are going to pay you back for it. If you don't make it to the closing table, you don't get anything, because this money truly goes to third parties to do something. All right. This money goes out to the banks. The banks don't spend it. The banks take it and buy services with it. They buy surveyors, they buy appraisers, they buy engineers. Okay. These are the people that are going to go out and do these third party reports for you. It all depends on what the bank asks for. The bank may say, I want an environmental, I want a physical needs assessment, a PNA, I want an appraisal. All of these things the bank may request, and you're paying for them. And it's so bad, guys, you might not even get the reports. You might not even be allowed to see them. But this is what the bank is going to request. Now, the reason why they do this is their due diligence. You're doing your own due diligence, and you've done it probably in the first 30 days. Then when you go to fill out the application fee for the bank and submit it, they're going to take that money and they're going to go out to the engineers and the appraisers and the surveyors and say, okay, go work on this property, and here's your payment. Because They got it from you. So that's another check that you're going to write. Now, when I was teaching this on my class with all my members, one of my students had just recently closed a deal. So we said, hey, what did it cost you? He got in the whole thing for $10,000 for all of his third-party reports. Unbelievable. I think that's really low, but he got a deal, and it was, the name of the bank was Greystone. But let me talk to you about these reports before I go on. These reports are, the first one is a physical needs assessment, or a PNA. There's another three-letter acronym, and I cannot remember what it is off the top of my head. But the PNA is when they send out an engineer to go through your property the same way that you did, but with a much, much more scrutinous eye. And they come back with a big report to the bank saying, this is what we found. And this is the amount of capital expenditures that would need to be done on this property. And it's going to cost X. All right. I've had deals killed because the engineer report was so bad. It would have required too much money. There wasn't enough equity in the deal. The bank walked. Okay, that can happen. And then that's tough luck. Find another bank. Find another, and they'll hire another engineer. Maybe you'll get it to work. I did on one of my deals. And just to give you an example, and just this is the truth of the matter. The first bank said that we had over $250,000 of capital needs. The second bank said we had 70. We went with the second bank because the first bank backed out. We went with the second bank. By the time we were done owning that property, what we came to the realization was that the first bank was right. So sometimes you might want to listen. You get a little reality slap with these engineers. Okay, so that's one of the reports. Obviously, another one is a surveyor or an appraisal sometimes. Or the other one is what's called an engineering report. I'm not an engineer, environmental report, or what we call lovingly as a phase one. Phase one is basically, it's just, they plug the address into a computer database that the engineers have bought into, and it tells you whether your property is, down gradient from a dry cleaners or, right next door to a gas station 50 years ago, stuff like that. And, this information determines whether the bank wants to move ahead with using your property as collateral for their loan. Back when I first got started in this business, if the bank saw the phase one and didn't like it and requested a phase two, that was pretty much the kiss of death. You should have walked from that deal. Nowadays, though, the technology has changed so much that environmental engineers are able to bring that property back to life. So a phase two is no longer a kiss of death on the property. It can still be remediated, and you could still buy that property, but be very careful. Just beware, because remember, you got to go back to your investors and let them know, hey, this one was built on an old Indian burial ground, and we're excited about that for these reasons. Like, no, I mean, don't. Just be smart. All right. Let me see. Also, you may have to pay the title insurance premium at this stage of the game. This is interesting. As I say to my members, you have access to all my contracts. You can use my contracts to get the deal under contract, start going through the process, but you're always going to have local counsel bless your contract, because my contract is not valid in all 50 states. And one of the things that you have to understand is that the way my contract is written is such that the seller pays the title insurance premium. Now, the fact is that in some states, that doesn't happen. In some states, the buyer is responsible for paying the title insurance premium. So that may be another check that you have to write that goes out the door. And unless you close, you're never going to see that money again. All right. Usually a couple $1,000, depends upon the size of the deal. Now, the next section we're talking, one final word, this big never. Never. pay an application fee to a broker. If you saddle up with some lender, I mean, this is how it happens. This is how it happens. Oh, and I've seen it happen so many times. Nobody is going to finance your deal. It's ugly, but you think it's the most beautiful property ever. But you're out there trying to talk to banks. Hey, come on, what do you say? You want to do? Nope, nope, nope. We're not touching it. So what do? You turn to that old fantastic source of all things business related, LinkedIn. And you start searching LinkedIn and you find these guys who will do those crazy types of deals like yours. And you connect with them. And they say, yeah, we love these types of properties. These properties are awesome. These are the best. Yeah. Send me a check for $5,000 and we'll get started on it right away. That's not a check for third-party reports like with a legitimate broker. This is what's called an application fee that goes into his pocket. And that money's gone. That money's gone on day one. Any legitimate broker makes their money at the closing table. And every legitimate broker will tell you whether he can get that deal done or not very early on. And if he can't do it, he's going to tell you. This guy who wants your $5,000 application fee, he's going to tell you everything your itching ears want to hear. And you're going to get stuck and you think, oh, this is going to be great. Great. This is going to be fantastic. I'm going to get this deal done. Those checks, when you're dealing with that type of person, the money flow is on a one-way street. It's leaving you and it's going to them, and you're never going to see a dime. I never have. In all of my years, I've never seen any of those guys survive. Don't do it. Don't pay some guy that you just found on the internet for an application fee because you're having trouble getting the deal financed. Move on from the deal. Just move on. All right. Let's see what else we got going on here. My next one. Oh, I'm going to, okay. So the next check that you're going to write, and there it is. That's what it says right there on that screen. Next check. I'm sure you can all make out the wording. Not at all. Okay. Won't be using this template again. Guaranteed that. And also going to check these templates before I do it, before I start writing these out. Okay. The next checks you are going to write are at the due diligence phase. All right. You're going to pay for your travel. You're going to pay for inspections. All of these things are things that you can get your money back at closing. But, at this stage of the game, you gotta stroke that check. You put it on your credit card, do whatever you have to do to make the deal happen. Now let's talk about inspections. A couple of different ways these can be done. I've done this so many different ways. First one is you go out there and you hire a property inspection company. This guy usually inspects houses. But this time he's coming to inspect your property because you're brand new and you don't know any better. And you end up paying him on a per unit basis. This is what I did in my first deal. 40 units, $40 a unit, $1,600. I wrote a check to this guy at the end of the day. Now, this is a guy who's being paid $300 per house. And he made $1,600 in one day. He was psyched. And then he gives me a beautiful report. Awesome report. Showed it to all my investors. So in depth, useless. Provided us with the information that we didn't really care. I mean, the guy made it seem like it was a house inspection. That's not why we're building these properties. We're buying these properties. We're buying these properties for the cash flow. When you do an inspection, the real deal, the real determination whether this is a good deal or not happens to be in the files within the filing cabinet. That's what's going to determine exactly how you're doing your due diligence and how determining whether you are buying a good property or a good business or not. Not looking underneath the kitchen cabinet to see if there's a little leak under the sink. Doesn't work that way. Overkill. Learn my lesson. By the end of my experience with using inspectors that I had to pay for, I only hired them to do those things that I couldn't, like the roof, HVAC, foundation, the wrap of the building, all of those things. I wanted to get a nice third-party report that I could share with my investors to show them what this property is really like. Everything else I did on my own. I mean, my partners and I would go through that property from, from the units, and it would take us 8 minutes to go through a unit. And so the first, I just remember the checks I wrote. First one I wrote was a $1,600 check for a 40 unit. One of the last ones I did was an $1,800 check for a 188 unit. Okay. So that's, once you get the hang of this business, this is a check you don't have to write. But until that time, be ready to stroke a check. Now, nowadays, what I do is my property management company does the inspection for me. They have people on staff that can go out there and actually give me a nice assessment of the property from that we'll get a write-up on it and determine whether we want to move ahead. So that is how we handle it today. Back in the day, we used to write checks, and you probably will too. Talk to me about it. If you're a member of my program, I'm going to walk you through it every step of the way. All right, next, let's see. All right, and this next slide is going to say things you never see coming. See that? Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's talk about some things that you need to think about as you're getting ready to get to the closing table. Things they don't teach you in school, so to speak. One of them are rate locks. Especially in today's climate, rate locks are saving a lot of investors right now. And that is a check you have to write as soon as you get the application, as soon as you get the letter of interest from the bank. As soon as you get a letter of interest from the bank, they're probably going to give you an option to buy a rate lock. And that is definitely something you want to do, especially in today's market, because some of the reports I just saw this morning, it's going to get even worse. Interest rates right now just skyrocket. I think 6 3/4. I think I saw. Anyway, so rate lock is one thing that you might need to write a check for at the closing, before the closing table, like typically 30 days beforehand. They don't teach you that in the schools. Other thing are utility deposits. This is something else they don't teach you. If you're buying a property that is individually metered, but you're paying all the bills on it, the utility company might come in and require you to put in a deposit for every one of those meters. And that's how, you'll get it back at closing, but until that time, you're not going to see a dime. So that is definitely something that you've got to take into consideration when you're buying a property. Is how is the utility company going to allow you to switch everything into your name, especially if you've never done this before? They may look at you like, what? No, we're not going to let you take on 40 new meters and we don't even know who you are. You're going to have to put up a deposit on each one of them. Ask the tough questions, because you never want to be short of cash at closing. Oh my gosh, worst feeling in the world. Okay. So those are a couple of the things. Now let's talk about, and as you can see from this next slide, let's talk about where you get this money. All right. Now, a couple of different places, obviously. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to jump on back over to this slide because I'm done my PowerPoint presentation. A couple of things that you want to keep in mind here is that obviously you can borrow it, save up for it. It's I think in the biggest property I bought, it's over 250 units. I think we ended up needing, not including the earnest money deposit, needing about $150,000 of cash. We had to be liquid for $150,000. Now we were, and that was not a problem, but that's definitely something you want to keep in mind as you think more about this. So that is one way to find the money is borrowing it, credit cards, a good friend. And here's the thing you absolutely have to be very, very careful about is if your friends and family are giving you money in order to buy this property, they're investors. You have to make sure that you don't take possession of that property in your own name. Take possession of that cash in your own name. You always want to make sure that any investor money goes into the escrow account and is held there by the escrow agent. You also want to make sure that you write the PPM in such a way that says, if you as the sponsor need funds to get to the closing table, you can draw them out of the escrow funds to get the deal closed. Talk to your SEC attorney, making sure that you put those types of provisions in there. Let me tell you a horror story. Met a student. I became a member of my program. He was out in. I met him out in California, and I said, he said, "Hey, can you look at this PPM? I'm thinking about doing this deal. Can you take a look at it and tell me if there's anything I need to worry about?" I went through it, and that guy had a lot of things to be worried about, because the way that the sponsor had written the document is, it said he could take my client's money and put it into the general bank account of his company. And if the deal didn't close, he's out. I couldn't believe what I was reading, but that's what it said. So don't ever do that. Tell your friends, family, countrymen never to do anything like that. Always make sure the money is segregated and in a separate place. If the deal doesn't go through, you just want to go back to the escrow agent and say, send all the money back and be done with it. Move on to the next one. And those investors will be back doing business with you shortly. So that's really it. That kind of ties in. If anybody has any questions about what what types of places you spend your money on, please put them in the chat box here. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you one opportunity, or I'm going to give you two opportunities to type in questions before I call it a day. But during the meantime, while we're waiting for, I'm going to read you two more of those stories about where famous expressions came from. Okay, here's a gross one, but you'll appreciate it. I got two. I got two good ones to go, and I'm going to have a lot more of these from my members on Monday night. Which one was? That hard. So yeah, I told him not to do it. And of course, the company, their response was, "Oh, we would never do anything like that." Well, it says you can do it right there in your document. So why are you saying you can do it, but then tell me you're never going to do it? Is that termed commingling? Yep. Is there another term for that? Specific intermix? No. Commingling of funds with your general asset account is a no-no. Absolute no-no. Commingling of funds. That's, another one that I hear about a lot is, these guys who do preferred returns, 9% preferred returns on day one. On day one, you're going to start getting a 9% distribution off that property. Well, the property's a non-performing asset. That's why we're buying it. We're going to turn this thing around and make a ton of money. But if it's non-performing, how are you getting the 9% off the top on day one? You're using other people's investment dollars. All the people that put money into the deal are now getting a little bit back every month. That's not an investment. That's a Ponzi scheme. Whenever you hear these guys who are talking about doing 9% preferred on day one without on a non-performing asset, just ask that question and don't believe a word they say afterwards. Okay, so my question is about utilities. When I did residential houses 3 to 4 a month, the electric company would always run a credit check, which killed my scores. Yeah, no kidding. Llama, doesn't that get you? Doesn't that just get you? Oh, they should pass a law. So I use a separate LLC managed company for credit. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But the thing is, they don't run the credit checks. I never had my credit check run by a utility company when I owned properties. We just had to give a deposit. It had nothing to do with the credit of any one person. That's why, because I owned one property at 135 units tenant paid utility, meaning, let me rephrase that, individually metered property, but all bills paid. I get 135 individual electric bills and gas bills every single month on that property. They didn't run my credit. They looked at the company and said, well, okay, you want this? You're going to have to put up a deposit because we're not going to run your credit. So that's how it worked on the commercial side with those larger properties. Okay, as incredible as it sounds, keep the questions coming. As incredible as it sounds, men and women took baths only twice a year. I don't buy that. May and October. Women kept their hair covered, while many times men shaved their heads because of lice and bugs and wore wigs. Wealthy men could afford good wigs made from wool. They couldn't wash the wigs, so to clean them, they would carve out a loaf of bread, put the wig in the shell, and bake it for 30 minutes. The heat would make the wig big and fluffy. If you figured out where this one's going, type it in if you think know what the punchline is. Hence the term, and this is what you're going to type in. Today, we often use the term, here comes a bigwig, because someone appears to be powerful and wealthy. The bigwig. All right, I'll buy that one. I'll buy that one. Here's the last one, and then we're going to call it a day, and you guys can go out there and well, let me see. When you transfer utilities to the tenants, doesn't that make the property more valuable? Oh, heck yeah, Llama. Oh, heck yes, AJ got it. I'll give you credit for that, AJ. I got one more coming up, so be fast on the typing. Yeah, Llama. Okay, let's talk about tenant paid utilities and all bills paid. Those are the two options. All right. Now, back before the 1980s, energy was cheap. Fuel was cheap. They could design properties so that there would be like one system for everybody to heat the place. We call that, among other things, a chiller boiler. Sometimes I'm talking too fast. I know. A lot of you people down south, I have to talk a lot slower for you, but that's okay. All right. So it's a chiller boiler. And when you paid your rent, all the heat and utilities were included. Then along comes a little thing called the energy crisis. And all of a sudden, the cost of fuel became so outrageous, and you couldn't go up in the rents, that landlords were losing money huge, okay? What ended up happening is all properties built after the 1980s tend to be individually metered. They learned how to put a furnace and a hot water heater in a closet and run the utilities that way. And then it all got put back on the backs of the tenants. And it was no longer a requirement for the landlord to pay the utilities. And he could carve that whole expense right off his NOI, and life became good again for landlords. But for those properties that had those chiller boiler type systems, you couldn't convert them. It was just not designed the right way. So all of a sudden, we had to come up with a new solution, and sometimes they call it RUBS or UMS. But the thing is that this is how it is done for those properties that don't have individually metered properties. They tend to be C-class properties. Don't try to convert them to individually metered, because your tenants will move out on you overnight. I had a property like that, 1,300 units on the street. I didn't own all 13. I owned, and that one, I think it was 122. 1,300 properties units on that street, and I owned 122 of them. And I thought, wow, I'm going to show these youngsters how to switch over to being a tenant paid utility property. Overnight, people were moving across the street, because those other properties were all bills paid properties. And I didn't understand my market, and I lost. So always understand what your market is. Don't tell your investors, oh, we're going to turn this into a tenant paid property, and you haven't even felt what it's going to be like to live on that street. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at these properties. Let me see. Big 1970, the Saudi oil embargo. Oh, yep, exactly, Lama. All right, last one. Here we go. Get ready to type. Let me just see. Oh, this is a really good one. This is a really good one. In the late 1700s, many houses consisted of a large room with only one chair. Commonly, a long board folded down from the wall and was used for dining. The head of the household always sat in the lone chair, while everyone else sat sitting on the floor. Occasionally, a guest, who was usually a man, would be invited to sit in his chair during a meal. To sit in the chair meant you were important and in charge. They called the one sitting in the chair the chairman. Today in business, we use the expression chairman of the board. Is that cool? I like that. Very good stuff. All right, everybody. Good to see you. Listen, I got a whole bunch of different topics. I mean, when we first started doing these YouTube lives, some you guys just started bantering out a whole bunch of topics that you wanted me to cover. And this one actually we talked about. Yes, Lama. This one we actually talked about doing. My staff said that this would be a good one because a lot of new members, people looking to get into the Multifamily OS program, start building their own franchise for owning and operating multifamily property, asking like, well, how much is it going to cost? What type of expenses should I expect? And that's why we came up with today's topic. Thanks, Lama. I appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed it. And so we've got some other topics. You'll always see them come out at the beginning of the week. We put out an email telling everybody all the different things that I'll be doing in the upcoming week to get our message and the message of multifamily investing out the door. This one is every Thursday, 4 p.m. So keep that in mind unless I'm traveling. Yeah, and if you have a particular topic you want to see, go ahead and type it in here or send us an email at info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com, and my staff will get it. We'll put it on the list, and I'll be more than happy to talk about it. So I'm gonna be signing off, and I hope this worked for everyone. Listen, don't be afraid of these types of things. Don't sit there and think, well, I don't have $50,000 to be able to do this. We'll figure out a way to get you there. You got to always be. Let me close by saying this. I just did a podcast today. I recorded it today. It's with Brian Burke. Love the guy. When you see this podcast come out, make sure you watch it. It is great. He closes with the 3 circles of trust. In order for somebody to invest with you, you've got to close the 3 circles of trust. Real estate, you, and the deal. And he talks about how he did it, how it's to be done. Excellent podcast. Make sure you watch that one when it comes out. Brian Burke. Subscribe. Yes. Thank you, AJ. See, I'm so bad at this social media thing that I should, AJ is actually giving me my lines that everybody tells me, Charlie, what you have to do is tell people to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, and see you next week. And I always forget to do that. Maybe I should do that more often. I sound like that guy, that comedian who does the newscasting or sportscasting. Inappropriate, I must say. Don't let little kids don't let thumbs up. Thanks, Lama. All right, everybody, great to see you all. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family, definitely like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That does a lot. That's big. So if all of you could just hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you, AJ. I can't believe I just did that finally. If you do that, that really does make a big difference towards growing this platform, and I would appreciate it. So thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next Thursday, same 4 p.m. Eastern time. And if you have a topic, let us know. We got a list of them all ready to go, but I'll always be out here having fun and teaching the word, the multifamily word. All right, everybody, have a great time. Talk to you soon.